Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I have met most of you, which I'm so excited to see everybody again today. Um, we may have a few more popping in, I'm hoping. But I'm just going to do a quick overview again of the program, the MSW program, a little bit of history. Um, and when I advance my slide, tell me if you're able to see the next slide. Are people able to see the MSW program
Yes,
slide?
that's good.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. Welcome again. Again, my name's Christy Richter, and I serve as the director of the Masters of Social Work program here at St. Louis University. Welcome to the school again. Hopefully you're getting some really good information. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to congratulate you on making a very wise decision to continue your education with St. Louis University. I've met many of you during your registration and pre-orientation process and look forward to meeting the rest of you, you know, on campus or virtually. If you have not already gotten registered, certainly reach out to me after today's event and we will make sure that you get in those classes that you need to. So our agenda today is going to be Jesuit Mission and History, just a brief quick overview of that, the MSW curriculum, the CSWE competencies, that's our accrediting body, Council on Social Work Education. That's kind of where our curriculum is derived from. And then the MSW handbook, where you can find that, some tips for success, and then a little quick Q&A. Again, we don't have a ton of time. I have about 15 minutes. And so I'm going to leave a couple minutes for Q&A. It sounds like we may be able to go over just a little bit. But if we don't get answers today to questions that you may have, certainly feel free to email me and I can try to get those answers to you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This is, does anybody know what this is? What this looks like? What this symbol is? Okay, well, the symbol basically that you see is a monogram for Jesus. So it's fondly used by the Jesuits, which are an order of priests within the Catholic Church, which are also referred to as the Society of Jesus. So SLU has a very rich history within the Jesuit tradition. Over 450 years ago, the Jesuits found their first college in Rome, and now there are over 160 institutions of higher education sponsored by the Jesuits worldwide, and 28 of them are in the United States, SLU being one of those. With over 14,000 students studying at SLU, roughly about 5,000 of them are graduate students. SLU is one of the top 5 Jesuit universities in the country by ranking and is classified as a research university with high research activity. St. Louis University's MSW program is ranked in the top 20%, 25% now, of all accredited MSW programs nationally, and we're fondly referred to in the community as the practice school. So St. Louis, oftentimes the people that are in the field will refer to us as the practice school. They say our students are really ready for practice with all kinds of communities and that they are prepared to just jump in and get started. So I think your courses will help hopefully prepare you to have that feeling and motivation. The Jesuit ideal of academic excellence is based on the conception of the person as a free and responsible agent capable of making a difference for good or ill in the world. Hence, St. Louis University directs its educational efforts to help students develop as critically reflective and socially responsible persons capable of exercising leadership in advancing cause of human good. It pursues this goal by providing an environment in which the intellectual, emotional, imaginative, technical, social, religious, and spiritual abilities of students are nurtured and strengthened. And what that, we hear it as a Latin term called cura personalis. So educating the whole person, all of those aspects of who we are. Jesuits are best known for their prominent role in education, missionary work, and publishing, with a strong emphasis on social justice and human rights. Studying to become a professional social work within a community of people that are dedicated to serving others is a unique and rewarding experience. I think that's where our connection to that Jesuit tradition really does make SLU a unique opportunity to learn social work specifically. So I hope you find your time here at SLU exceptional. And that's just a little bit of the history. So the curriculum that we've talked about in the past, probably during our registration orientation meeting, looks like this. So here's the curriculum at a glance, right? We have generalist foundation courses, and those courses are just giving you that foundation, that ideology of social work. If you had an undergraduate degree in social work, these are the courses that we reviewed to say, oh, you had a B or better in your undergrad, you already met those competencies, and we'll get to what the competencies are in a second. Then you go into, once you've completed those courses successfully, you go into the concentration core classes and Hallmark courses. Just something to point out, and this is in our handbook, these generalist courses, you have to have a B or better in order to continue in the program and move forward in the program. So B minus does not meet it. B has to be in those courses or better. And then when you get into your concentration courses, your Hallmark courses, the research and practicum courses, you can receive a C, but obviously you want to make sure that you're maintaining a 3.0 or higher GPA. So having too many C's might bring you down in your GPA. So you just want to be cautious and conscious of that. The curriculum, like I mentioned, begins with foundation, learning generalist terminology, ideology, and history of the profession. Once the knowledge is into the courses of your concentration of choice, we have 3 concentrations. There is the clinical, which is more the direct care, where you're working one-on-one or with small groups of people, typically around mental health or resource connection. There's community and organization. That's the second. That's more macro. If you have interest in policy or administration, people tend to go into community and organization. And then there's applied behavior analysis. And after your practicum session, you'll be going into the different concentrations and learning a little bit more about them in those breakout sessions. So applied behavior analysis, I kind of glossed over that quickly. That really is looking at how do we influence behaviors for particularly you see it commonly used with people on the spectrum, but it's not necessarily or that have developmental delays, but it's helping for them to learn and obtain behaviors that are more socially acceptable and not harmful to themselves and or others. So that tends to be an area. And I think we have 3 people that are going to be going into the ABA concentration. All right, so just a little bit of background. How do we develop our curriculum? Do we just make it up because this is what we think is going on? No, we don't. We actually have a little method to our madness. And part of that is dictated by, like I said, the accrediting body, which is the Council on Social Work Education. So for any accredited program, we're given by the Council on Social Work Education competencies. And what it's saying is, if you are a BSW social worker, these generalist points, these generalist competencies are things that you must be able to do. And all accrediting programs follow those. And then we, as SLU, have these concentrations, right? So we develop what are the 9 competencies then based on the concentration you're in. So that's kind of the advanced skill set. But it is developed from the generalist accrediting standards that our accreditor gives us. Okay, so these are the 9 competencies. I'm going off script because I'm trying to hurry here, but I'm going to go back to my script and just say that the accredit social work programs nationally to ensure the programs provide quality education experiences to students, provide these 9 competencies. To guide the process, CSWE provides institutions with educational policy and accreditation standards. You may hear this, it's called EPAS, EPAS, to design their curriculum. They're updated. The last updated was in 2022. So at the top of this, you see it says EPAS 2022. That's the educational policy and accreditation standards that are the most recent. So for our generalist courses. There are 9 competencies recognized in the generalist level that provide the basis for the general foundation curriculum and are integrated into the 5 generalist foundation courses. So those courses that I showed you on the previous slide, these competencies are embedded in those. Typically, you'll look at your syllabus and you can see which competencies are embedded that are meeting that course and those competencies. So according to CSWE, each competency describes the knowledge, values, skills, cognitive and affective processes to make up the competencies of a generalist level social worker. Well, you're not a generalist level social worker, right? You're an MSW program. So we have to give you the basis and make sure that you've met those competencies first, and then you build on those for the MSW. So engaging in research and policy, engaging in anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion in practice, engaging, assessing, intervening, and evaluating are part of direct practice. They're also part of advanced practice. So while we're demonstrating ethical and professional behavior, we're also reviewing and making sure that you're meeting those key pieces. In all of the courses, the dimensions of these competencies are being measured. So we're constantly assessing how you're doing and what we can do better to help you prepare for the field. So when we say, give us evaluation feedback, we really mean it. We want to know, how can we do these things better? Sometimes people will get out of the class and think, I didn't learn anything. And then when they get into practice and practicum, they start to recognize, oh, I did learn something. This is how it applies. Sometimes it's hard to know until you're starting to apply things that you've learned, that you've actually really learned something, right? So you may not see certain things until you get into practicum, and then some things will just be very, you'll be very aware that, oh yeah, this is brand new learning for me. There are specific competencies for each concentration. All of the core concentration courses also have measures built in. So the program is also practicing the social work competencies in engaging, assessing, intervening, and evaluating. One of my jobs is to look at all of the outcomes from learning outcomes that we make sure that we're looking at for the students. And then we start to evaluate, are we scoring lower in certain areas? Then how do we make adjustments in those courses and make sure that you're being able to get those competencies at that level? That our benchmark usually is 80%. So making sure that you are 80% of the time getting the competencies at an 80%. That can be very confusing. I can explain that later if that's something that people want to know more about. And that is higher than the national average, by the way. Our benchmark is set higher than the national average. Handbooks, they can be found on the website. I suggest really as a new student, go through the handbook, read it once. I know it may be a little bit boring. It has all of the policies and expectations that we have for students. So the grading policies, just so you're aware of them. I mentioned it briefly, those generalist courses, you have to have a B or better in order to move forward. Practicum, you're going to learn a little bit more from Dr. Ducasse. What are the processes and policies for that? So that is something I really encourage you to look through. There is a table of contents, so if there's just something specific you want to know about, check out the table of contents, and that'll allow you to figure out where in the book It's about 30 pages. So I get that it's a lot of information, but it is really valuable information for you. Okay, top 10 suggestions of how to succeed in a program. So I had a colleague, Pam Huggins, who was in our program for a while, and she and I would talk about what do you think are the things, I used to be in Danny Young's position. So as an admissions person, I would say, okay, what do you think are the things that students need to be successful in the program? And so these were a couple of the things. Depending on success depends on how do you set yourself up for success? Have you talked to family and friends to make sure they know this is your focus, right? Do you know that you are a person that is, has to have things color coded and organized in a certain way? Making sure that you do that, but also making sure that you're setting yourself up for some balance in life, right? School is going to be a lot. Do take that time for self-care. Do take that time to just kind of unplug. Try to build that into your schedule so that you do have some school life balance. Okay. Be prepared, do the readings, be as prepared as you can. Plan so that all necessary readings done prior to class. Maybe you're working with another student in the program and they read part and you read part, and then you go back and you kind of give each other the cliff notes, because there is a lot of reading. So just make sure that you're not cramming. Cramming does not work in grad school. So be prepared. Plan a course and practicum schedule that will promote your best work through meeting with faculty advisor. Be sure to take a mix of courses that'll inspire you, not put courses that you may find challenging all in the same semester. So I know that we have kind of a roadmap, but if you're working with your advisor to figure out, am I taking this class or that, think of this and keep this in mind. Also, it's best to take courses that will prepare you for the practice area that your practicum is going to be in, and have that either concurrently or prior to practicum. So say I want to do hospital social work, doing the social work practice and health field might be a really important thing to take. So just being cognizant of that. Strong writing skills are very important to professional social work practice. You do a lot of case notes. And academic success will require you to be good at writing. So seek assistance early if you know that you're not a strong writer. We do have a graduate student writing center, and be proactive. They do virtual sessions. So just make sure that you're seeking and utilizing those resources. APA, professional writing format, is required in the MSW program. Not everybody's familiar with that. They do have a guide that you can get that will help you understand APA. If you Google it, you can also find some guides. So just make sure that you purchase the APA guide, or you have the quick APA guide ready to use. You're required to appropriately cite and credit other authors' work. If you're not doing that, it is considered plagiarism. So you really want to make sure that you're doing it in the right way, and not having to be reactive, if somebody calls you out like, hey, you didn't cite this. And if you have questions, ask. Our professors will, hopefully be able to help you with that. So academic dishonesty is a big thing. We keep people accountable. And so making sure that you're understanding APA is important. So demonstrating critical thinking in class and written skills. AI is a big thing right now. Making sure that you're not just falling on AI. We will call you out on that. There is a university academic honesty committee that will review. I'm calling the committee the wrong name, but there is a committee that will review if you get called out on plagiarism or using AI. So you just want to make sure that you're careful and you're really utilizing your own critical thought when you're doing writing assignments. If you experience any personal or health challenges, make sure that you're seeking the resources on campus or in your area if you're doing an online program. There are SLU Health Counseling Center. They do have virtual mental health services as well. In order to do your best academic work, you need to be healthy, particularly in this field. So I just really encourage you to reach out if you're struggling. Be a strong contributor in group projects. There's a lot of group projects in social work. So be sure that you fulfill your obligations and contributions to the group assignments and with practicum work groups. Throughout social work careers, there will be numerous times where you're working in groups and where effective outcomes depend on all participating. So just making sure that you're doing that. Develop strong research skills. Strong academic papers as well as social work practice depends on evidence-based literature. We have the librarian that you probably met already. She's a great resource. I would really encourage you to reach out to Rebecca if you have an assignment that you're needing help with, as far as getting resources and additional, help for your specific literature and research. Sorry. And then lastly, extend your learning beyond the classroom. Really, throughout your educational experience, faculty and field instructors will inform you of advocacy and continuing education workshops where you can extend your knowledge as well as network with professionals in the community. We oftentimes can be references for when you get ready to get out and get jobs. So make sure that you're utilizing the relationships that you have through this program and making sure that they're professional, that you're reacting in a professional way, and that's all you have control over is your reaction. So making sure that you're doing that in a professional social work way. A lot of the people you're working with now in the program, colleagues, are going to be your colleagues out in the world after. So just remembering that, and what kind of impression do you want to make with your future colleagues, right? So that's a lot, really quick. Any questions? Danny, I see you're on here. I don't know if I'm over time or not, but
Christy, take all the time you need. I've notified the presenters after you, but don't feel like you have to rush through this. Take the time you need, and if there's any questions, feel free to ask Christy now. Thank you.
Yes. And I did go through that pretty fast, but you guys feel free to ask me anything. If it's not related to something I just presented, feel free. Now's a great time.
May I ask a question, Christy?
Please. Yes.
I have you already know this, I think. I have my bachelor's in social work and my master's in public health. And so I have a lot of work experience because I'm still working in the field, but I'm going to take a full load, and I am interested in getting a fellowship. Does work experience apply to anything that some of the classes we can forego?
Yeah, unfortunately they don't. And that is not a SLU or a Christie decision. That is a CSWE. So Council on Social Work Education does not allow us to give credit for work experience.
Okay.
And you are not alone. We have professors actually from SLU that are in our program right now that have asked, I've done research for years. Can I not get credit for that? And we can't. They require that you have all of the stuff within the program that is set. So if you had taken graduate level coursework towards a degree that you never earned, then we can consider some of those courses towards electives. But if you earned that degree, that other graduate degree, there is a SLU university policy that does not allow us to bring in any courses from another graduate degree if you earned it.
Even though I graduated from SLU with my master's?
Even if you did it from SLU. I know. So they're saying you took this credit outside of, if you had been in a formal dual degree, then we're allowed to be able to, consider some towards the other. But outside of the dual degrees, we are not able to take any credit from another earned degree.
Okay, and I have one more question. I'm
Please.
interested in clinical because I have operated as a behavioral specialist for many years, and I want to get licensed, but I'm also interested in community. Is that a dual degree program where you can get two, I can't even think of the words, concentrations? Or
Right.
do you do an elective in one and a concentration in the other?
So here is, if we think of our education, you know this probably better than many because you've had a master's degree too. When you think of your education, the younger you are, the younger, like in high school, you know, and then into college, we start to narrow, right? In college, we start to learn how to learn. And then when we get into masters, we really are kind of becoming more specific in our expertise that we're learning about. To go for PhD, it's like pinhole specific, right? But a master's is kind of even more specific than an undergraduate degree. In response to your question, there is a way to get a little bit of both concentrations. However, something to think about is when you pick a concentration, you are also then doing your practicum in that specific area as well. And your practicum opportunities in community and organization and clinical are very different. So although you could take the concentration core classes and a practicum in that concentration, when you get to your electives, if you're taking something different, you are getting a little bit, but it's still a little more generalist than like getting more specific in your skill set. So yes, you can
Okay,
do that, mix it, but no, it is not a dual. It's not
okay.
considered a dual.
And my reasoning is I have worked as a behavioral specialist without a license. It's very similar, but it's no license, as you already know. But my interest is to serve the community. And so I think what I will do is talk to my faculty advisor about direction. I just don't want to start off in the wrong space and then have to switch later. So
Shanae, tell me again, um, were you in the community and organization concentration? You said you were in the clinical, right?
I'm in the clinical right
Okay.
now.
And if you
And
want to get licensed as a clinical social worker, that's the concentration you would stay in.
okay, okay, that
Yep.
makes sense.
You want to get an LCSW,
Yes.
or depending on what state you're in, it might be a slightly different license, you know, but ours in Missouri is LCSW. So
Okay, I live in St. Louis now. I just haven't been in St. Louis for a long time. So I have just recently relocated a couple years. So I'm learning about the Missouri process.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And it's actually in the process of, there's some updates and changes that they're going to make, the licensing process. So,
Okay.
but for all of you, if you're thinking about licensure really is based on the state that you're in, that you want to practice in and become licensed. The first level of requirements for any state is getting an MSW from an accredited program, which we are. But then beyond that, your state that you want to practice in is going to give you what are the rest of the requirements. And it looks like, Mikey, you have a question too?
Yes, I had a quick question. Are there any opportunities to either be a TA or a professor for bachelor's levels courses, or is that all housed under the grad assistantship application?
It is all housed under the graduate assistantship application. There are some things that may be changing as far as ability to do TAs. That I'm less familiar with right now because our students just became unionized for graduate assistantships. So I don't know, we don't really know yet how is that going to impact teaching assistantships. But most of our, in the School of Social Work, graduate assistantships are more research based rather than TA based. Typically in the past, I can only go based on the previous, you could, as an MSW, be a TA for a BSW class. You cannot be, though, a TA for your peers, like, a class that your peers are going to take. So it would be, like you mentioned, an undergrad, if so.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Other questions?
There's a great question in the chat.
Oh, thank you, because I don't see the chat. Let me, you know what, and it's probably because do I still have share
If you're
screen?
presenting, I can read it to you. It says, could you still get licensed if you take the community and admin route, or do you have to be in clinical?
That is a great question. Yes. So you can get licensed. Nobody's going to ask you what was the concentration that you took in your MSW program. However, you may have more studying to do than a clinical concentration student, because there are going to be very clinical based questions on the licensing exam if you're going for the LCSW, so the licensed clinical social worker. There are some states, Missouri is currently one, but this is where some things might change in this legislation, where they have what we call an LMSW or an LAMSW. So the LMSW is right after you graduate, within 90 days, you can take kind of a generalist test and become licensed as a master social worker. Okay. There is an LAMSW, which I think 2 people within our state have, not many, right? And it's really because the market doesn't require it. But if you were to do macro social work, you could get a licensed advanced macro social work. So it's LAMSW. That may go away. The LMSW may go away. Illinois did away with their entry-level license. And then the LCSW, which definitely is the market requires if you're going into any kind of mental health, if you want to be reimbursed through insurance companies or be covered through Medicaid or Medicare, like that would definitely, you would want to get licensed. So with the clinical license. So did I answer the question? I kind of went off on a tangent there. So you can with the ComOrg. However, there's going to be some content that you may not have gotten because you didn't take those ComOrg, those clinical concentration courses, like diagnosis and assessment. Diagnosis and assessment is probably the biggest one, particularly if anybody has an interest in working with the VA, wanting to do mental health work. You have to show, and there are some states that require you have to show that you took a diagnosis course if you're doing that type of work. So that diagnosis and assessment course is a key one. It's really understanding what the DSM, diagnoses are and what are the characteristics of different diagnoses. In social work, we don't tend to like to label people. And so diagnosis feels like labeling. However, it's important if you're going to do the insurance piece. You have to work within the system we have currently. Yes, Shanae, again.
I am the researcher for sure, Christy. So I ask a
I
lot of
love it.
questions. So as a Master of Public Health in Behavioral Science and Health, what are your recommendations? Should I stay in clinical or do community org?
We could certainly have one-on-one conversations about this, but I think there are probably others here that might be interested in the answer to that. So again, if you're wanting to become licensed as a clinical social worker, I think the content that you learn And you want to use that license to practice, you know, what we consider more traditional mental health or your own kind of,
Mhm.
you're going to be learning about therapeutic approaches in clinical settings in the concentration courses for clinical.
Okay.
Those key pieces you don't typically learn, I don't think, in behavioral health, public health.
Okay.
So like cognitive behavioral therapy, possibly dialectical behavioral therapy, psychoanalysis, those kinds of things, motivational interviewing would be more in a clinical course than a community and organization course. If you've worked in the field, ComWork tends to be, if you're going between the two, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm more of community organization in my teaching, but that's something that you can tend to learn more in the field than the clinical, like technical skills.
Okay. Is there a faculty person that is doing that type of research with behaviorals and spectrum based that you are aware of?
So applied behavior analysis, there certainly is like Professor Lewis would be a good contact. She's more ABA though, and you're talking about clinical. And so I would want to clarify more for you, like when you say behavioral, what do you mean? Like,
I work with a lot of special school district behavioral clients. And so I really was thinking for if there were opportunity to have an assistantship, is there already research and study being done with that type of um need, working with behaviors, spectrum?
right, right. That probably the person that would be closest to that probably would be Professor Lewis.
Okay.
We do have a new faculty member that's coming on as the director for applied behavior analysis. And he too would be Dr. Michael Passage. He too would be somebody that might be an appropriate faculty to talk with about those opportunities.
Okay.
And I do see, Rachel, you also have your hand up.
Yeah, when it comes down to feeling out your specific concentration, is there any potential opportunities? Like I'm currently an ABA, but say like I wanted to make a clinical switch, is that possible within a certain time frame, or is it more so just once your pathway is chosen, it's chosen?
You can switch. So these are the things to think about when you're considering that. How many courses have I taken within that concentration specifically? How many courses that I've taken that have counted towards electives? Because once you make the switch, those courses for that concentration will shift down to your electives, and then you'll be taking the required courses for that concentration. So you
Gotcha.
want to see like how much do you still have, right? Most people don't want to be in school forever. They want to be able to get out and start practicing. So even though you have a flat rate, you can continue to take some more classes until you've met your required courses. You do have a little bit of wiggle room there. And typically, if I made the shift after the first semester, if I'm ABA, I may be taking 2 social work generalist courses and 2 kind of ABA specific classes. That's the only concentration that things are a little bit different on the roadmap. Then those 2 ABA classes, if I move to clinical, would then count towards my electives. And then I'd only have 1 elective left that would be more clinical specific.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anybody else? These are great questions, by the way. I appreciate it. I don't disappear after today. So if you do have other questions, feel free to reach out. And you will learn more about the licensing process while you're in the program. You know, you will have access to faculty that you can ask questions of if you're thinking, oh, am I in the right concentration? You will find out your academic advisor, which will be a faculty member, within 2 weeks of the semester starting. So those will be told to you through an email from Jasmine and introduced to you. You'll be introduced to the faculty member through an email. Okay, then you'll reach out to them and we'll send out a reminder, so don't worry, but you'll reach out to them in probably around March to set up an advising meeting to then talk about your summer and fall schedules. All of this will be on those Canvas pages we keep referring to. So when you get access to those Canvas pages, if you haven't already, that information will also be reiterated on the Canvas page. All right, it has been such a pleasure getting to see you all. For those of you that are community and organization, I might pop into that breakout in a few. But I'm gonna go ahead and give you I had 2 more slides, and basically it was just my email address and Jasmine's email address. And our emails are our first name dot our last name. I am putting the link that you are going to go to for Dr. Ducasse.
Christy, I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat for them.
Oh, I just did.
Perfect.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Christy. We
Do that right now.
So let's go ahead and get going. We got enough.
Okay.
All right. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I am Dr. Wendy Ducasse. I'm the Director of Field Education and Assistant Clinical Professor. Like I said this morning, some of you I might have next week in 5725. So if you are in human behavior and the social environment, I'll see you there next week. If you are in the online section. So I'm going to share my screen and get into the presentation. And just as a heads up, there will be slides available and this whole thing will be recorded so you'll have access to it. So don't stress about taking everything down because it'll be made available to you after we conclude today. So let me get my slides together. And while I'm doing that, if I could have everybody who has a question about Practicum, if you're thinking, stressing, wondering, worrying about it, take a moment to jot down what that question or those questions might be. And I will get to them at some point, probably during the presentation, but if I don't, I'll leave space at the end for those questions, okay? All right, can somebody give me thumbs up to let me know that you can see my slides? All right, I see 2 thumbs from Rachel. Thank you very much. All right. So I'm going to talk with you about the road to Practicum. And I will give you some tips along the way, some things to consider as well as some important dates for you to keep in mind. So I'll talk about what the Practicum program is, what it encompasses. I'll go through some terminology because you'll hear different names and references throughout today, and you've heard some earlier today. So hopefully the lingo will stick. We'll talk to you about the planning process, interviewing, and give you some contact information for folks afterward. Okay, so Practicum is the signature pedagogy of social work. And that is just the fancy way of saying that Practicum is how we assess your readiness to go and do the work of a social worker. Our accrediting body requires that we have some way to measure your readiness based around 9 social work competencies. And so Practicum is where you do the practical application of all the things that you've learned in your courses and demonstrate it through the skill set you'll use there.
It's an integrative experience. You're applying what you've learned. So we're not just having you do all this book stuff for nothing. It actually goes into work. And Practicum is our way of socializing you into the profession. You get to do social work in those experiences. You're not just getting coffee or making copies or things like that. You're actually working with clients. If you're someone who is a macro practitioner, you're actually working on community development aspects as well. Our process is unique compared to some universities in the country in that we allow self-selection. That is how we have students connect with practicum sites. And what I mean by self-selection is that we have a database of resources of practicum sites. We develop some real time based on where you are in the world. And once we do that, you interview with them, you speak with them, you express your interest, and you decide, yes, based on the learning that I need, based on the experience, this is where I want to go. And they also agree to accept you as a student if they have openings too. So it has to be a mutual selection between the two of you. And some universities have an arrangement where it's you say, oh, Dr. Ducasse, I want to work with children. And then I say, oh, then you go to XYZ agency and you just go there. You don't have a say in it. You just go where they send you. And what we like about the self-selection component is that it very much mirrors the job search. And so it gives you some of that experience and it gives you some autonomy and voice and choice in picking where you go. And there is some flexibility kind of going along with that. And of course, there are parameters around the types of site based on your areas of interest, based around your specialization or concentration. So we do have to vet the site and we do have to approve where you go. We can't just send you to anywhere. We want to make sure that it's the learning experience that you need and that they are able to meet those 9 areas of competency. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a sec too. And practicum is something that you have to show that you're ready for. It's not just an automatic, you sign up for the course. You have to be in good academic standing. You have to meet professionalism requirements. And we do assess that. We see where you are readiness in terms of your academic skills, if you are in good standing, meaning that you're not on probation. And we do look at that because those are all things that are important in determining and seeing that you are prepared and ready to go into a practicum experience, because it is the next level of your coursework. It's not quote just going to shadow and observe. You're actually doing social work, and this is a piece of your professional development, and it is also a course. During your practicum, you'll also have some learning goals and you'll develop a learning agreement, which you'll do in conjunction with the person who'll supervise you at your practicum. And that learning agreement is your contract while you're at your practicum. It's essentially your contract and syllabus that says, these are the competencies, these are the 9 competencies, and these are the tasks that I will work on and complete while I'm in my practicum to demonstrate that I have competence in all of these areas. And you do have to have availability in your schedule to do practicum. You have to be physically present to do it. You have to be available. You have to have the required amount of time available for you to do it during the semester. It's something that I would encourage you to start thinking about what your current schedule for your life and all the things that you are doing. So start thinking about what juggling you might need to do in order to fit in practicum, because it's not something that you can test out of or anything like that. It's a requirement for any social work program in the country. And you want to treat it like it's your job. It is like an employment role. It's not volunteerism. It is very much like a job because, again, you're doing social work stuff. So here is some terminology that you'll hear periodically. The Office of Field Education is the office that I'm the director of. It is myself and our faculty liaisons that you'll work with. Also includes the Assistant Director of Field Education, Professor Heather Lewis, and also our Administrative Assistant, Shelby Tarkington, who works on a lot of the paperwork that we have that's required for developing practicum sites, for the contracts that we have with practicum sites, and all kinds of things. And so I'm the director, as I mentioned. Field liaison or faculty liaison. That will be the individual that you are assigned to, who you'll meet with to talk about your professional interests and talk about the sites that you are thinking about, the skills you want to develop. And they will be the person who is walking alongside you during your practicum experience. They will be the faculty member who works here for the university that will do your site visits with you. They will approve your learning agreement. They will approve and review your confirmation of your practicum. They will be that point person if you have any questions or concerns as you're working on your interviews with your practicum sites, or if you have questions or concerns while you're at your practicum site, they will be your point person. And once you're matched to them, they will be the person you work with for the duration of your program. Now, this person differs from your faculty advisor / mentor. Your faculty advisor is the person who is working with you related to your academic coursework. They will help to make sure that you are on track for graduation. They'll make sure that you are in the appropriate courses. That's the person you'll meet with each semester, saying, oh, I'm going to take this in the summer, I'm going to take this in the fall, et cetera, et cetera. Student, that's you. You have the most responsibility in this. All of this is primarily driven by your effort. So once you are informed that you are connected with your liaison, it will then be your responsibility to reach out to them to schedule an appointment. Once you have had your appointment, then it'll be your responsibility to reach out to the organizations to schedule interviews. It will be your responsibility to submit your confirmation of your practicum once you select one and secure the site. So there's a lot of the majority of this process, the onus is on you. So when they were talking about staying on top of emails, staying on top of your coursework, and being intentional about those things, this is an especially important piece for you to think about that diligence in as well. And the collaborative database is a database that we share with the University of Missouri St. Louis that has over 450 practicum sites that are local to the St. Louis metro area. For those of you who are outside of the metro area, you'll work closely with your liaison to develop and identify sites. So that will come along as well. But that database does have many organizations that we've worked with over the years that are approved practicum sites that we've had students at over the years for you to explore and start looking at. And when you register for that database, and the link, I will show you how to do that as well. The link, you will need to use your St. Louis University email address to register to have access to that site, because it is managed by the University of Missouri St. Louis, and it is an internal site. It's not for just folks who are not a part of our universities to have access to. So you have to use your SLU address or you won't be able to access it. Sites or agencies, those are the organizations where you will do your practicum. So you might hear practicum site or practicum agency used interchangeably. Field instructor is the person at your practicum site who will supervise you. They'll be like your boss. They'll be the person who evaluates you at the end of the semester. They'll be the person who does your weekly supervision. They'll mentor and guide you. They'll work with you to develop your learning agreement. Some sites have task instructors. Task instructors may be folks who do not have an MSW. Field instructors are required to have an MSW, have been in their position for a minimum of 1 year, and also have their degree for a minimum of 2 years. But task instructors might be folks who don't have a social work degree, but they may be somebody that you check in with, on a regular basis and work alongside, that can also guide you and provide some supervision and stuff like that. Some sites have them, some sites don't, but you must have a field instructor at your organization to complete your practicum there. So let's talk a little bit about what this looks like. So for those of you who do not have your bachelor's degree in social work, you will need to complete a foundation practicum. And that is where you'll get kind of the lay of the land of what social work experience is like. You'll take that in conjunction with a seminar, which meets 4 times during the semester. They meet for 2 hours and 45 minutes each time. And you are with other students who are foundation level students, and you're talking about your experience. You're learning some things about professionalism, ethics, developing your learning agreement, you're processing and talking through hot topics or challenges that you've had at your agency. And it's really just a cool time to see what everybody's learning and where they are. And people really enjoy it. And it is taught by faculty liaisons amongst the Office of Field Education. So that is a requirement for your foundation experience. You have to take both of those together. And so before you can hop into practicum, of course, you need to have completed your foundational coursework. One of those courses is SWORK 5750. So that is the social work with individuals, groups, and families course that I believe Professor Bruckhaus and Dr. Morrison are teaching this semester. That course you must pass with a B or better. That is a have to. You have to have had that course before you can pursue practicum. It is a prereq. Along with those foundational courses, and you must be in good academic standing, as well as have a B or better in that course. So when you get to your concentration or specialization practicum, that is where you expand on those generalist skills that you developed at your foundation level. This is where you're thinking about your work as a clinician, or if you're someone who is going to be a macro practitioner working with communities and organizations. This is where you're taking those things to the next level. This is a 2-semester experience, so it's taken back to back at one site. So you'll be at this one location for 2 back-to-back semesters. So let's say, for example, you are starting your concentration in the summer of 2025, if that's where you are. So then you would do 1 semester there, so summer 2025, and then the next semester, fall 2025 would be the 2nd semester of this practicum. And it is a total of 600 hours. Your foundation practicum, your foundation generalist practicum that I mentioned on this slide is 300 hours. So this is just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So for those of you folks who are in the ABA concentration specialization, you have an additional practica that you complete. And part of that is because that is part of the requirements to sit for your BCBA exam. So there are some additional components that you would have in your concentration experience that we would not have in the other 2. And once you're matched with your liaison, you'll talk more in depth about what those practica look like when you take them, and all the requirements for that too. And for your concentration/specialization practica, you will have seminar for the first half of that. So you would take it in. So if you are in it for, let's say you're doing it summer, fall, so you would have concentration seminar that first semester, but the second half of your practicum, you would not have seminar. So let's talk a little bit about some of the logistics of practicum. So most folks complete their practicum experiences during the daytime hours. There are very few practicum options that have availability in the evenings and on weekends, but there are some. There are a few. So there are some possibilities. There are not a ton, but there are a few. And generally, when we're thinking about when you would complete practicum, they can be completed between 10 and 20 weeks. And we're thinking, and if you're doing the math and doing the pacing, that's roughly 15 to 30 hours a week. So, and we really want to think about not just, oh my gosh, I need to get this done and get it over with. We want to think about the full cycle of learning. You want to be there for a good amount of time for you to be able to see all the things that you're able to in that organization. And when you're working with clients, you want to be able to see if you're doing clinical work, the intake process, treatment plan development, working on goals, and possibly, if things are going well, the discharge process. So you really want to think about how to stretch the time in a way that allows you to have a full experience and not rush to get through for the sake of just being finished. So in thinking about special options and considerations, there are some folks who may work in social service organizations already. This is one that many people do think about, especially if you're already working in organizations. You may do a place of employment practicum for either your foundation or your concentration. It must meet some specific criteria, some of which includes it has to be new learning and ideally with a different supervisor, and your organization has to agree to it, and the organization must meet the standards related to the competencies that we're looking to address. So there is a whole proposal that you submit. The site has to be vetted, and we have to agree to it, and it meets the criteria before you can actually do a practicum at a place of employment. And there are also concurrent and block practica options, and these are all special options that have to be pre-approved. That they're not just automatics. Some things that I also want you to know is that some practicum sites require things like background checks, fingerprints, because of the populations that they work with. They may require you to get some immunizations, drug testing, and show proof of those things. We do not house any of that information here. You are responsible for any fees associated with that. So if they ask you to get certain immunizations, fingerprint shots, etc., that is your responsibility. Some practicum sites cover that, but not all. So that might be something to ask in advance if they have those kinds of requirements, how that is covered in all of that. Another key component to think about is if you have any kinds of things in your background that could impact the sites that you're able to go to, you need to let me know that as soon as you can. We need to have a conversation about that because we'll also need to do some planning and thinking about sites that you're able to go to, because there may be some that will not allow you to be a practicum student based on the type of conviction that it is. So share that information with me so that we can plan accordingly. So let's talk about what supervision will look like. As I mentioned, it will be with an agency-based person who has their Master of Social Work degree. They must have been with the organization for a minimum of 1 year and have had their degree for a minimum of 2 years. And they must also complete a training that we provide through the Field Education Collaborative. Your field instructor cannot be a relative. They can't be a friend. They can't be somebody that you know from the neighborhood. They can't be a partner, auntie, play cousin, anybody like that. You cannot have a current or previous relationship with this person. It's unethical and it can also be messy. So they cannot be anyone that you have previous relationship with. So the process goes that I will assign you to your liaison. There is a form that you fill out into Vera, which I will give you access to and help you make sure that you know how to navigate the process. You fill out the form. On the form, you have your name, you have your concentration or specialization. If there's a special population that you want to work with in that, maybe you want to work with veterans, maybe you want to do school social work, maybe you want to do medical social work, or you're thinking about nonprofit administration. There are different options that you can select within your concentration, particularly for the clinical folks. So mark that as specific as you know it as of this point. Those things can change, and they do sometimes, and it's okay. But it helps to give me an idea of who to match you with faculty-wise. So once I have your request for a liaison, then I will look at it, I'll review it, and I will approve it, and I will send you an email that says, congratulations, you are on the road to practicum. Your faculty liaison is Dr. or Professor so-and-so. And, you know, from that point forward, you will then need to email them. I don't need to be copied on it. You just email them and say, hi, Dr. or Professor so-and-so, I'd like to meet with you. Please let me know your earliest availability to do so. So here are some deadlines that you need to know. You can screenshot this. It's posted in different places that you'll see in the future, but for you to know today. Requesting a liaison, if you are an online student that is outside of the St. Louis metro area, I need your request in by the end of January, because there's a lot of extra stuff that we must do for you as a student who is outside the St. Louis metro area, in working with identifying practicum sites, identifying field instructors, getting all the paperwork together for you to have an on-time start for your practicum. We really need to have you matched very soon. Those of you who are in the metro area, it's much easier, much faster to do. So your deadline is a little bit later, but you're welcome to submit yours early January too. Completely fine. I will not be sad if you do it early. Place of employment proposals. So those of you who are thinking about proposing, I want to do my practicum at my organization where I work. Then that is something you will discuss with your liaison once you're matched with them, and then you'll need to have that form submitted to me. And I will review it and I will approve it, or if it's not approved, I will give you some comments on it and send it back for you to revise. So after you have done this, then there's the confirmation, and the confirmation is the process that gets us going on the paperwork on the back end of things. It tells us where you're going, when you're starting, who's going to supervise you. And from there, the paperwork that I complete, the paperwork that Shelby Tarkington completes, all of that is driven by your confirmation. And these deadlines are early so that we can get that stuff taken care of early so that there's not a delay in you getting started. So I mentioned these steps already, some of these. So here are the steps and stops along the way. You will request practicum. So you'll request it. If you're planning to do summer, you'll request it this semester. If you're planning to do fall, you want to do it now, because trying to do it over the summer gets hectic. So that's why we have you also request practicum currently or during the spring or fall too. So you will request, you'll get approved, I'll match you, you'll meet with a person, your faculty liaison. While you are in process of that, you will complete a HIPAA course. It's an hour quick session. Just talks about HIPAA compliance. It's required for all of our students going into practicum, being mindful of those things that will ensure protection of patient and client privacy. You'll complete it, upload your certificate, and we'll be good to go. So then you'll meet, I'll assign you to your liaison, let you know who that person is going to be. You'll prepare for that meeting by coming in with some ideas of where you want to go. You'll want to, if you're a local, you'll want to explore that database and kind of write down some ideas of where you want to go. If you are someone who's outside of the metro area and you have some ideas for agencies where you might want to go, you can jot those down too, and your liaison will talk with you about those ideas and explore that further with you too. So after you've met with your liaison and you've talked about them, they'll give you some insight and ideas, because all of our liaisons have a lot of experience and they've done this for a while. So they might say, oh, you're interested in doing this. You might consider such and such agency, and give you a contact person to reach out to and things of that sort. So you'd also, could you please mute yourself? Thank you. So you'll want to come into that meeting prepared with some ideas. And then once you leave that meeting, they'll say, okay, sounds good. So then you start reaching out to people to schedule interviews. Do not start contacting folks for interviews until after you've met with your liaison. Then once you have interviewed and you found the perfect site, you know that's where you're going to go. Then you submit your confirmation form. You submit your confirmation, says, this is where I'm going. This is who's going to supervise me. This is when I'm going to start. And then you register for your classes. You register for practicum, and with your faculty liaison, they all have an individual section, and then integrative seminar based on where you're located. If you're an online student, you'll register for the online section. If you are an on-ground in-person student, you register for the in-person section. And then you begin your practicum. These are all the same things. Already talked about this a little bit. If you have a site that is not in the database, if you're a local person, then, and this will also pertain to those of you who are not in the metro area, if you have found a site, talk about it with your liaison. If it's not in the database, you can say, oh, I know this organization, they do great work. The liaison will need to vet the site. They'll need to talk with them to see if they have someone who qualifies to supervise you, that they can meet those academic educational standards, and that it will be a good fit based around the things that we look for in organizations. And so we'll want to get that information as early as possible from you so that we can we can have the time to be able to approve it, because we're working around the schedules of us as well as the folks that work within the organizations, and it can be a little challenging at times to coordinate. So we want to get as much information from you early as possible, so that we can make that happen when feasible. So we've talked about all of these things already. It's just a reiteration of all the steps along the road. I mentioned this already. Excuse me. You complete the confirmation form into Vera. You'll register not in Banner, it's courses at SLU now. You'll register for both practicum and seminar. If you try to do one without the other, it will throw up an error message and you won't be able to do it. So again, practicum with your liaison, and seminar with any liaison for foundation seminar. But once you get to the concentration or specialization area, then that is when you will want to make sure that you're signing up for the correct one. So if it's ABA, if it's for the communities and organizations concentration, if it's for clinical, you want to make sure that you are signed up for the proper one. And if you are a St. Louis local student, you'll want to sign up for the on-ground section. And then if you are in the online program, you'll sign up for the online seminar. So here's the last nuts and bolts piece. So once you have secured your placement, you will follow up with your the person who's going to supervise you at your practicum to arrange your start date. If there are any additional pieces that you need to do there, so if there is a background check, if they need you to have immunizations or shots or anything, or drug testing, then you'll want to make sure that you have that stuff scheduled and taken care of so that you can onboard and start on time with them. You'll want to think about parking logistics. You want to think about any kinds of professional clothing needs. Some places require certain attire. That might be some questions that you would ask, during the interview. So like if you're going to court for your practicum, if you are, doing things that require more formal or dressy clothing, then you'll want to get some clarification around that so you'll be prepared. You'll want to ask, are there any orientation or training dates? Some organizations are really cool about making sure that practicum students kind of have the same onboarding as new employees, so you get to see the whole process. So you want to get some clarification around that and any kind of onboarding paperwork or processes that you want to or need to be a part of. On site, just plan on learning, shadowing, and being a part of the culture of the organization. And know that initially you may not have your own caseload or your own responsibilities just yet, because you're getting to know the organization and what the responsibilities entail before you actually start doing those things. But you'll get some practice, don't you worry. I also want to let you know that there's a Canvas page for the field education office. It's called SSW Field. You should have been invited to that already, but if you have not, let me know so that I can make sure that you are, because that is where the vast majority of information from my office will come to you. So you'll want to make sure that you have it and you'll have your notifications turned on, because I post announcements, I add new modules and all kinds of things there. There's also Canvas pages for all of the Practicum courses. There's Tavera, which you'll learn how to use. You'll complete all of your Practicum related paperwork in Tavera. And your learning agreement will always be due the third Friday after you start your Practicum. And as I mentioned, also you'll log your hours into Vera, and your field instructor will sign off on those, and your liaison will be able to review your hours and your learning agreement for approval too. So I mentioned already that the HIPAA training is completed. You'll also sign you must complete your HIPAA training before you go into your practicum. If you've done HIPAA training from another source or an organization that you've worked with, we could approve that for you if it's been completed within the last year. You also will sign off on a code of ethics statement. The university provides malpractice insurance as part of the contract that we have with various organizations and agencies that we work with in the community. And just a general reminder, if you are on any sort of probation, academic, admissions, or professional probation, you are ineligible to plan for practicum. Or if you, after this semester, are on probation, you would have to delay your start of practicum if you had planned something for summer until you're off probation. So this is the contact information for my office. I am Dr. Ducasse. That's my phone number and email address. My assistant director is Heather Lewis, who, if you are in the ABA concentration, she'll be your liaison. She'll work with some of the online students, but not all. But she will talk with those of you who are in the ABA concentration in a bit. Shelby Tarkington is our amazing, dynamic administrative assistant who handles a lot of tech support around Tavera and handles a lot of the back-end paperwork for our practicum sites. And these are the faculty liaisons. I'll connect you to them once you are matched. Professor Barrett, Professor Crow, Professor Deutsch, myself, Professor Lewis, and Professor Richter, who you met a little bit earlier today. And then for those of you who are on the west side, and Professor Melissa Morgan may be a liaison that you're working with, or Dr. Williams, who is kind of on the on the east side of the country, is working with our students as well. So that is my information in a nutshell. So I will first take a look at the chat and look at those questions that I see. And then I will answer any other questions from there. All right, let me see. Okay, I see some folks who have not received an invite to the SSW Canvas page yet. Okay, all right, so we will take care of that. I will post my email address at the end of this, and email me and just say I don't have access to that yet, and I will take care of getting you invited myself. Okay, Isabel's question is, we have advanced standing, do we need to complete the generalist practicum? No, you won't need to, because you have advanced standing, and so you would start with your concentration practicum. Okay, name of the Canvas course that you should have been invited to is SSW Field. Thank you, Callista. Okay. All right. Okay. So those were the questions that were in the chat. What other questions do you have that I can answer for you? Well, before you ask questions, if you have a very specific to you personal question, let's talk offline. I'll put my contact information for us to connect and talk about that. But if it's a broad question that other folks may benefit from the information on, let's start there, okay? All right, who's got a broadish kind of question for me? And if you don't, that's okay.
I have a question. Okay, so for students like me, like I want a VA placement. Who am I competing with, or how competitive is it? Is it just my cohort, or is it um people going into their second practicum? Like,
That is such a good question. And I meant to bring that up during my presentation. You are competing with essentially any other student who's interested in a practicum placement at that site. So
okay.
we have locally, we have the Brown School, we have UMSL, we have folks who maybe live in the community that are from other universities that want to do their practicum here. So it's competitive in that regard. And that's one of the reasons why when we talk about the importance of getting in your meeting with your liaison early, getting that paperwork in so that I can approve you so that you can be matched and you can start having those conversations and getting connected to organizations early, then you can be on the earlier end of reaching out to people because they know when they will have whatever openings that they will have. So it's competitive in that regard, but there are so many organizations within the community that are available to you. So it's not like that's the only organization in the community, but for those like niche organizations like the VA and places like that, it's a little bit different in that regard. Good question. Who's next?
So I have two questions. So I saw that whenever you were putting in the request for a liaison, there was two different dates on there, and the online it said online out of the metro community. So is it online in general, even if you're in the metro community, you want the January 31st, or just?
So if you are a student in the online program and you are in Kentucky, for example,
Okay.
you want to get your stuff in early.
Yeah.
If you are like out, maybe even like I know somebody's from Cape. I went to SEMO. Woo-hoo. You may want to also reach out early too, because the farther out you are, we have to do a little bit of extra legwork, especially if we don't already have sites developed in those communities. So we'll want to get you connected to your liaison early so you can start talking. And, in the background, you can start thinking about places that you're familiar with too. And so you can bring those to conversation between the time that you meet with your liaison and being matched, they'll start looking at some ideas of, colleagues that we have in the community that may be able to host a student. So it takes a little bit of extra time from the pieces of finding the organization to the legal paperwork that we have to do because there's contracts that we have to get signed. Sometimes there's some back and forth on the language and things and what's concluded, what's not, stuff that, has nothing to do with you, but more so about university stuff. So we need it to be done early.
Okay. Awesome. And then just another question that I had, I saw somebody else was in advanced standing, so I wanted to ask this little more, not just specific to me and everybody else maybe. But so for my whenever I was in my sorry, I'm sick and my brain is everywhere. At Lindenwood, I did 500 hours for practicum. Is that going to take is that going to include, I know the general, I'm not going to have to do the general, but what about, is that going to take away from some of the 600 hours that I have to do for the specialized?
Regardless of whether you have a BSSW or not, you must do a 600-hour concentration practicum.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. And I see Juanita in the chat. I don't know if it's common, but do folks ever study abroad? Yes, they do. And it's been a minute. We haven't had anyone since the pandemic started. So if that is something that you are thinking about doing, that needs to be discussed ASAP, because there's a lot of stuff, extra stuff that goes into planning for an international practicum too. So if that's something that you're thinking about, that needs to be indicated on your request form too, so that whenever I connect you to your liaison, y'all can start talking really soon about those components. Is it Mikey or Mickey?
It's Mikey.
Hi.
I had a question for those of us interested potentially in a school social work practicum. Are there typically options available during the summer, or is that something I would have to look into starting in the fall?
That is an awesome question, Mikey. And I will tell you that school social work practicum are primarily fall, spring.
Gotcha. And then would we still be able to kind of follow a similar track if we, push it back, start that practicum in the fall? Would that really delay our academic progress too much, or would that still kind of keep us in line?
Not necessarily, because there are some other courses that you can take, depending on your interest, depending on what electives are available and things of that sort. So, it wouldn't necessarily throw you off. There are courses that you would take, and just as you are in your academic planning, when you're meeting with your advisor, let them know that that is your plan, so that you can start structuring your required courses that you're able to take. So that you can have that path that you're looking for.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Of course. Also, let's see, we'll need to ask, are there clinical practicum? Yep, clinical practicum, org practicum, ABA practicum, all times of year. I will tell you, in terms of placements, some placements may only run on a certain schedule, like locally, the VA here is currently only doing fall, spring concentration. So if that's an interest of yours, you would have to do fall, spring. Schools do fall, spring. Some sites, they just have it. That's their cycle. That's the way they move people in and out of their particular system. But generally speaking, most places have different, you can start summer, you can start fall, you can start spring. And it's just based on your schedule. It's based on their availability with field instructors. So there are options in any semester. Hospitals, yep. Hospitals can be fall, spring, summer, fall. It just depends on the setting. Can we do different ones or just one place if we have both? I'm not sure I understand your question. But
if I didn't have the first one for the BSW, and then you said we have to do two.
Mhm.
So if I had to have one like in the summer and then one in the fall, do they have to be like the same exact organizations, or?
So your foundation generalist it has to be two different places. So you would have your foundation at XYZ organization, getting your foundational stuff. And then whenever you move into your next practicum, that would be somewhere else with different experience at that specialization concentration level.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you want me to go into Canvas and sign everything up inside there?
Tavera is where you'll do your request for a liaison. I'll get you all the information that you'll need for that. Everybody who's here today, if you're in 5750, Professor Bruckhouse's class, I'll see you again on the 24th or 23rd. I'm coming to her class to present. I'll share this information again. I will also post on the Canvas page how you get into Tavera and do all the stuff for you to get in your request for your liaison. So don't stress. I got you covered. I see one more hand and I'll take that last question. Shanae, right?
Yes.
Hi.
I just want to make sure I do have a BSW, but I got my BSW over 20 years ago, that I don't have to do the two practicums. Or do I have to do the two practicums because of the time frame?
You know, Shanae, I need to get more clarification around that. I'll have to double check that with Professor Richter, since she looks through all the advanced standing and individualized things, and be able to provide you some clarification on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, folks, I am going to, in the interest of time, I know things were running a bit behind. I want to make sure you get to your concentration, specialization sections. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. If you have some individualized questions, some unique circumstances related to your background, my email address is there. I also post my Calendly link. So if you want to visit me on Zoom or come to my office and check in with me, you can do that too. So that's my contact information. And as I mentioned, those of you who are taking 5750 this semester, I will see you on the 23rd. I will be in person for those of you who are with Professor Morrison. Dr. Morrison, I will be online for those of you who have Professor Brockhouse that day. But if you have questions that you're thinking of before then, feel free to send me an email or stop by or schedule something on Zoom. So I am thrilled to see all of you. I know it's been a long day. You're going to do fantastic. This is a great place to be, and I can't wait to work more with you in the future. So welcome again, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Dr. DeCasse.
All right. Thanks for your time, y'all.
I've dropped in the chat the links to the next break.